Greetings collectors and welcome to today's retro game review. It's time for some Japanese shoot 'em up fun today in yet another one of those early games for the Sega Mega Drive that has managed to slip under the radar for some time. You may have heard of this one, but have you ever played it? Join me today as I uncover the joy of Curse for the Sega Mega Drive. Now, the late 80s and early 90s were a boom time for shooters on Sega's 16-bit box of fun. Any fan of the genre will no doubt have played horizontal shooters such as Arrow Flash, Zero Wing, Wings of War, and of course Hellfire. Yes, the Sega Mega Drive really did have some fantastic horizontal shooters for us all to get stuck into. All of the above did make their way out of Japan onto the North American Genesis and European PAL systems, resulting in them being reasonably well known, at least to collectors. Sadly, Curse by Micronet never officially left the shores of the land of the rising sun. As such, it's a game that I'd like to bring your attention to, because, well, you just need to know about this game in my opinion. Out of the box, it's very much a run-of-the-mill horizontal shooter. There's all the regular elements you'd expect to find, such as power-ups, smart bombs, and weapon options. Add to this a rather convoluted backstory of two warring planets, Parseria and Seneca. It's up to you to pilot an ancient starfighter, which was abandoned by the Parsarians. As you've probably gathered, you are the last hope of the planet Seneca, so make sure your trigger finger is ready, because my goodness, things are going to heat up as your last-ditch effort to save the world ensues. The general format of the game is rather pared back and straightforward. 5 stages, usually consisting of a mid-level sub-boss and a guardian boss. There's plenty to see, collect and shoot here, so expect a solid experience right from the word go. The mechanics of the pickups give the game its primary game feel. You start off with the pea shooter, but quickly ramp up your arsenal to absolutely devastating levels. There's a blue laser spread shot, ideal for levels requiring widespread damage. A concentrated yellow laser for more focused damage. A cluster weapon, which is a bit of an acquired taste. It will fire one single package but deliver an explosion of shrapnel. This can be powerful in certain circumstances, but perhaps not best for use in general gameplay. There's then what are usually referred to as options in many shoot 'em up circles. These include up to 2 drones that follow and protect you, as well as the ability to add homing missiles in addition to more firepower to the drones. As an added bonus, you can rotate the drone positions via the C button. Generally speaking, you are best off keeping these positioned above and below in my opinion, as this setup will typically provide a wider shot pattern and protect you from stray vertical bullets. However, if you are going up against a one-on-one boss that spams horizontal fire, they can become an invaluable extra shield up front. You are fortunately granted a shield which is depleted if your ship is hit by a projectile. This can thankfully be restored via the E energy pickup. One quirk of the game is that there are no smart bomb pickups. To add these, you must successively pick up 3 power-ups of the same type. It's an interesting mechanic and certainly adds to the strategy. Sadly, the truth is that there's so much going on most of the time, you'll be concentrating on the action there, rather than remembering which power-up to pick up next. Counterintuitively, this also means that the strategy of swapping from one type of power-up to another is slightly undermined, as it encourages you to stick with the weapon you're currently using. That's if you go down the smart bomb strategy route of play. In a nutshell, that's it. Blast your way through the levels like it's 1989. It's all very colourful and the levels are packed with a decent challenge. So you're probably wondering, why am I even bothering to tell you about this game if it's all rather standard? Well, it's mainly due to its collecting status and backstory. Here in the UK at least, the game rarely seems to get a mention due to historical reasons. The Sega Mega Drive was launched in Japan in October of 1988, with Curse arriving on the system the following year in late 1989. However, the North American Genesis would not be released until late August of 1989, and the European PAL editions of the Sega Mega Drive as late as 1990. In effect, Curse was a game that was completely unknown to most European gamers and many North American gamers of the day, as the game didn't see a retrospective region port. I'm not saying point blank that the game was unknown outside of Japan in 1989 to everyone, but it would have been highly unlikely that this was on any gamer's radar during those early launch years. Besides, we were all rocking Altered Beast at the time. So why no release outside of Japan? Well, it's likely down to the developer Micronet, which I believe are still in business as a software house at the time of making this video. Not exactly one of the top developers of the day, but you may know a few of their titles, perhaps Gotha for the Sega Saturn. I personally know them more for Black Hole Assault and Heavy Nova. In 1989 and 1990, the Sega Mega Drive was fresh on the scene, and it had no shortage of killer applications. Sega alone dominated the home arcade conversion scene with games such as Altered Beast, Hang On, Golden Axe, Outrun, Space Harrier, Afterburner, and any other number of hits. Third-party support was also strong right from the start. As such, a relatively small game such as Curse just missed out on the cut for global domination. It was simply never going to set the world alight in terms of innovation. As I mentioned, Micronet are still in business, so let's check out their website. Yeah, not exactly what you were expecting for a software company. Hey gang, who remembers HTML 3.0? So I had to double check that this was the same Micronet. For confirmation, it is. To be fair, their main Japanese site is marginally better looking, but still, it doesn't exactly look cutting edge considering their main products and services being pushed are their 3DX graphics viewer. It's at this point I thought I was going down a rabbit hole. The site looks very bare-boned, and selling software to create 3D tech seems almost bizarre in this day and age. Good grief, what happened to this company? I feel like I've stepped back in time 20 years looking at their rendering product. The more I look at their site, the more I feel like I'm in some sort of bizarre ARG experience. But their company profile confirms it, they are indeed the developer that made Curse. None of this is relevant really, but a weird and wonderful look at what became of the studio. I was ideally hoping to bring you a bit more information and backstory on the game's development. Sadly, there isn't too much information out there. On one final point about their site though, I did check out the page code for Easter eggs, because, well, I'm a bit like that. I see in their vast array of meta tags on the homepage they include keywords such as sexy, bomb, and perhaps my favourite, rice cooker. Seriously, I have no idea what's going on with the Micronet website these days, but good luck to them. Anyway, back to Curse itself. Is it any good? And that's a question that I still haven't quite resolved in my own mind, having completed the game. Here's where I see things. The graphics are a real mixed bag. Considering this game was made by a third party and an early title in the system's life cycle, I'm happy to cut this one some slack. In general, I describe the graphics style as functional. It's neither all-out spectacular in terms of execution, such as games in the Thunder Force series, nor is it as well polished as a game such as Hellfire. At the same time, it's not bad looking either. There is a decent amount of parallax scrolling, and some nice detail in the enemy design. It certainly gets the job done. On a technical point of view, the game also achieves some really nice touches. There's a good use of incremental background fade to transition the time of day, as well as decent sized sprite work. The dragon boss at the end of level 2 is particularly nice. You'll definitely get my meaning here though on level 4 when I tell you that the game is really solid in terms of its construction. Just look at the overall feel of speed and complexity the game has. The level features multiple layers of parallax, large sprites and dozens of them, all without slowdown. If blast processing is a thing, then this is a great example of it. Simply stunning. Of course, a game is only as good as the experience, and here's the real reason I have mixed feelings towards Curse. Level 1 is very much a warm-up. Even without practice, you're likely to breeze through this one on a first attempt and have powered up your ship to a decent level of damage at the same time. As with level 2, the difficulty is likely to be well within the reach of most casual shoot-'em-up fans. By level 4 though, well, the difficulty curve ramps up to godlike skill levels. Just look at the nonsense going on here. It can be done if you put in the practice time. However, the difficulty is likely to put some players off. The finale of the game brings the experience back to a much better balance of difficulty and fun in my opinion. It's full of tight corners, devastating enemies, and overall a really decent way to round off the game. My other slight reservation of Curse is the soundtrack. Games like Hellfire pumped out absolutely rocking soundtracks on the Sega hardware. Again, Curse just seems to lack a little oomph in places. There are some decent chip-style tunes here, and split stereo. However, they're unlikely to inspire you to record these to your cassette tape and play in your Walkman whilst you're heading out to the arcade. The game does thankfully have a very pleasing conclusion in the way of the boss fight. As the cover artwork alludes to, you'll face off against a nightmarish biomechanical head. There's something about this fusion of flesh and machine that really appeals to the science fiction lover in me. It's both beautiful and disturbing at the same time. I can't help feeling that I would want a bit more of this imagery throughout the rest of the game. It was this type of imagery that first drew me to the game. Again, that blend of a woman's face, exposed brain tissue, and mechanics feeding into it. I must say, it's first-class cover design. I could easily imagine this being on the front cover of one of those 1970s pulp sci-fi novels. When I first saw this cover, it dawned on me that I'd seen this imagery, or at least something very similar to it before. Now, this is just a personal opinion, but I believe the artwork took at least some inspiration from the American artist and sculptor Gene Safran. Safran is mostly known for his work on sci-fi book covers and related art. It's his work on a 1975 album cover for Pictures at an Exhibition though that I believe was an inspiration for the Curse cover, at least in theme. There's just no getting away from it. The sculpture of the human head, exposed at the rear and being fed by mechanical elements, and blank facial expression bears at least a passing thematic resemblance to that of Curse's cover. Of course, this is just an observation and not any kind of proof. It's also not that uncommon in science fiction work to blend mechanical and biological elements. Artists such as H.R. Giger practically made a whole career out of it. There is, though, a curious Japanese connection here. Although it was Russian composer Mussorgsky that composed Pictures at an Exhibition, this particular album release was covered by none other than Isao Tomita. Why is this relevant? Well, for one, Tomita is Japanese and a pioneering figure in electronic and synthesized music. Bear in mind, this edition of the album was released in 1975. It's by no means any stretch of the imagination to believe that his work was an influence on a like-minded generation 14 years later of those interested in all things electronic, such as gaming. Again, it's not proof, just an observation on Japanese culture of the time. Either way, it's a cover to be enjoyed. Conveniently, the artwork appears on the box, manual and cartridge, and feels like a really decent offering for collectors. With Japanese cartridges being slightly wider than the PAL editions, you will of course need the original Japanese hardware to run this one, unless you modify your console. The actual cartridge pin connector though will happily fit the non-Japanese Mega Drive hardware, so it is considered 100% compatible. So, how to sum up Curse? Well, I think I need to caveat heavily that the game appears to be a handcrafted labour of love with modest ambitions, rather than any great killer application. There are no cutscenes, no great orchestral soundtrack, no graphics to push the system, save for the technicality of programming so many sprites without slowdown. The start screen even lacks an options menu unless you hold down the A and start buttons. And even then, when you access the menu, it's still quite a basic affair. The game was completed with just 4 programmers, one of which doubled up as the musician, and had only 2 additional designers. Curse is a game that you have to look at in context to appreciate. End to end, I completed the game in just 19 minutes in my perfect run, and that includes booting up, watching the end credits, and entering a high score. In that respect, Curse can be quite a short experience once you've mastered it. That's not to say that mastering it won't take some time. Incidentally, I will upload my perfect run as a bonus video on the channel for those that would just like to kick back and watch the action. These days you are going to pay a bit of a premium for this title if you buy on the online auctions. It falls into that niche area of lesser known Japanese collectible, but will surely appeal to lovers of the genre. It's a game that, unless you go looking for it, you would probably never even hear of it. It's one of the reasons I wanted to showcase it on the channel today. Is it the best horizontal shooter on the system? No, not by a long way. There's so much choice though, it was never going to be. What it is though is good honest fun and a good honest challenge. Personally, I believe that the graphics work well for what the game is trying to achieve, the soundtrack does enough to not outstay its welcome, and the enemy designs are more than enough to give me that nostalgic feeling of an era gone by. Throw into the mix the creepy artwork and sinister vibes, the game does still have a lot to offer. For those curious about Japanese exclusives of the 16-bit era, Curse is well worth the entry fee. I hope that many more of you get the chance to try this one out in the future. Until next time, happy gaming. Hello again, I hope you enjoyed today's show and thank you for the view. Remember, you can always comment, like, subscribe, and find us on the social media sites below. Happy collecting!